You're listening to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast.
This makes my nipples hard.
Welcome back to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast. Today we're joined by Frederik Olsen.
Hello.
Hello. Originally from, Vohaul, Denmark. Did I get it right?
That's impressive.
Do I get a dollar?
You're going to do the Nardwar thing, right? And pull up all kinds of insane biographical info about me. Stuff I'd completely forgotten myself.
She so is, yeah.
I might. Well, Frederik is a writer, producer, director, and musician who came up with the original idea for Space Quest Vohaul Strikes Back, which is what we're going to be talking about today, way back in 2002 when he was still a teenager.
Yes.
Yeah, he remained a part of the core team all the way through its release 9 years later. He's also composed music for Space Quest Incinerations, and these days you can find him behind the synths and keyboards with Air 47, reworking classic DOS-era games into industrial rock and metal, which is pretty darn amazing. So today we're going to dive deep into Vohaul Strikes Back, how it came together, what changed, a lot of things, over those 9 years, and the crazy adventures that eventually became the frickin' most amazing game I've played in a long time. So, hey, thanks for joining us.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you.
Paul, you even liked it. And you don't like any games, right?
Yeah, man, that's true. I don't like most things. And
no, so true.
I fucking love this game, dude. Like, I'm so... We were doing this anyway, so it's just such a relief on a personal, selfish level to have loved the game, because I was going to talk to you anyway, and now I get to be genuine and sincere in saying that this is the most fun I've had in an adventure game in forever, honestly. It's so good.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think the thing about fan games is sometimes there isn't a lot of feedback. People just download it, and yeah, some people will turn up and be really cool and write, hey, I really enjoyed it. But, most of the time you don't really get much, since it's kind of like under the radar. There's no Steam reviews or anything like that. So that's really, really nice to hear. Thank you so much.
Man, it's so sincere too. Like I can't. There's a timeline out there. There's like a bastard Paul that didn't enjoy this and is stuck doing this interview with you, and he's just bullshitting his way through it. But this is great because this is the real. Like I wanted to be like a champion of this game when it was over. I'm like, everyone needs to play this. Fan game doesn't do it service. Like I almost feel like it shouldn't have fan game anywhere near it because it's so polished. So well thought out, man. Okay, we'll get into it. I had a ton of fun.
Yeah, I have some. I have conflicting thoughts about that.
It's always hard when you're on the inside looking out and you're the one that made the game.
Right.
I think to an artist, the drawing is never really done. It's up to the viewer to interpret it at that point.
True, yeah, but I mean, there is also that we were always very, very conscious that this is like an interpretation, like a Space Quest viewed through the lens of a bunch of like mostly European guys who at that time watched a lot of anachronistic stuff like Monty Python, Father Ted, and the game is packed with references to that kind of humor, and in jokes, and that almost kind of became a goal in its own. How many references can we cram into each scene? So, some people have referred to it as Monkey Island in space, and I'm kind of okay with that. It has a more European slant on it, inevitably, than I would argue very American Space Quest. So we were always very, very aware that, hey, this is kind of like its own thing. It's our take on a sequel. It's not an official sequel by any means, but I'm not gonna stop people if they want to view it as the official thing. You do you.
It's hard not to. And the way it knows the Space Quest series. Outside of the other references, it knows itself and it knows its content. And you can't always say the same. Look at Space Quest 6 again. I think it forgot a lot of its own canon, and you brought it right back.
I think they made a conscious decision to move away. It's like we never got the Terminator 3 that was promised, and we're probably going to get into the Terminator franchise later on in this talk, but we never got the future war movie, and, time travel franchises just kind of stop being fun because you kind of paint yourself into a corner, and I'm guessing that's what Josh Mandel wound up thinking with Space Quest 6. You know, it's much funnier to work with a blank canvas. So I can't say I blame the team that did that game. You know.
Yeah, I agree. I think I accidentally come across as shitting on Space Quest 6 a lot, but I really love Space Quest 6. I really do. I just I guess chronologically speaking, it's a little bit annoying, but it is a really fun game. Whereas your game really scratches the itch of feeling. It gave, I don't know. I feel like it kind of gave me closure.
I mean, I think we took a lot from Space Quest 6, not so much on the plot level, but rather, you know, Josh Mandel will cram every single scene chock full of click events. Like, you can click anything, and usually the responses you get are really, really funny. So, you know, I don't even think I had played Space Quest 6 by the time we started the project. You know, growing up with, like, we only got dial-up by, like, the early 2000s. So the daunting task of downloading a 600 megabyte CD-ROM just wasn't going to happen for me, and then get it running in the early XP days. So I don't think I was familiar with the game. Clearly, a bunch of the other writers were.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what you had said a moment ago about the European influence, I had actually noted the opposite in a sense, where because as I'm playing it, you know, I did a quick little searches to see the different writers involved and was kind of looking at their last names to see where they might be from. And I had kind of concluded that the people who worked on the game must have been mostly American, because so many of the references completely hit for me. I mean, like, one of my personal favorites, just because I love Ace Ventura, was that there's a Finkel-Einhorn reference in there that I really liked. But there's, I wasn't getting, like, I didn't feel any sort of disconnect, like, oh, these references are out of my culture. I mean, there's some brilliant ones in there, man. Like, I think my favorite might have been, there's a Derrida reference. There's a Derrida joke in this game that's really good. That's a deconstructionist sort of joke, I guess you could say, that was just like, wow, like, that was slow hand clap for me sort of thing. But yeah, I wasn't getting the sense that it was, I don't know, European skewed or anything like that. So I guess I can actually, let me retroactively turn that into a question. Who wrote the stuff?
It's really, really hard to, like, because we were writing on it from, like, 2002, like you mentioned, and, like, not a whole lot of the puzzle design from that time made it into the finished game, but a lot of the in-jokes and lines did. There are lines that people would leave alone because they had no idea what they meant. For instance, one of our earliest writers was Benjamin Vigent, whom listeners might know as Jess Morissette's co-host on Quest.
Right.
And one really funny thing that he wrote that I didn't get, but he explained it to me. So by the end of development, I was the only one in the team who got it, is a reference to the skit that Mel Brooks and Carl Rayner did with the 2,000-year-old man. It's when you speak to the fossil on the surface of Radon, the ice planet. Roger Wilco will ask this ancient dead creature for advice, and the advice is, eat nectarines, half a peach, half a plum, it's a hell of a fruit. And that's Mel Brooks' classic. But I think when you look at the finished game now, I think the bulk of the writing was done by Andres Kalle, who is Estonian, but was at the time, and probably still is, very well versed in pop culture, comedy and otherwise. And Chris Yushko did a lot of the writing too. And, you know, if you haven't watched his old DuckTales Flash cartoons, he's since made them available on YouTube. You absolutely have to. The guy is a mad genius in the best possible sense. But I would, you know, with all fear of stepping on anyone's toes, because I haven't really done any statistics, I would say those guys probably wrote the bulk of the game as it wound up releasing, because we were changing stuff like all the way till the week before release date, I think.
I bet. And it's old school, the whole thing. I think you were using a CDR as backup. You guys are emailing scripts back and forth. And I mean, none of this is just loading it into Google Drive and sharing a drive. Like, what a different world it was when you were making this.
it was a game changer when I stepped down as the project lead pretty quickly because I realized that this was growing into something I couldn't, possibly comprehend or deal with. Like, I'm 14 years old, I can't do this. So we got another guy on whose name is Chris Manning, and he was the project lead for a couple of years, and he actually hosted a bulletin board for us, like a forum. So that was a complete game changer, because until then it was just an email that made the rounds with a TXT attached to it, and every couple of days more stuff would be added to the TXT, and sprites would come in from the guy who did those, and backgrounds from the guy who did those, and it was just one asininely long email thread, and that would never have worked in the long run. So I'm happy we moved on to a very, very prototypical Spartan virtual office.
Okay, virtual office. Yeah, I was wondering when I was playing it, I guess logistically how you guys tested things, put things into the game. Like, I imagine you all had to have AGS and you had to have it on the same version number, and I go through this with Anna, making my games, and she's constantly testing things and helping me with things, and even with just the two of us, it can be a little daunting as far as making sure we have identical plugins and versions, and sometimes it's easier to just put a room script in instead of changing the entire build, things like that. But I'm wondering in like 2005 or whatever, mid-development, exactly how you guys pulled it off.
Yeah, I wasn't really too involved in the programming until like the very last few years of development. So by then Chris Mining had left, and we got PCJ Patrick C. Johnston aboard as project lead and also programmer, which he is really, really, really good at. So I think he was the guy who introduced us to Subversion, source code control. So eventually we got such a repository. I think our code until then was stored on some FTP server, and if you were among the worthy ones who were doing any programming and testing, great, you get access, otherwise you don't. Eventually we got a repository that a bunch of us would contribute to. I did a tiny little bit of programming, mostly putting in lines, and I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I got a scare at one point because Chris Yushko and I were working on the same thing, and I wound up erasing like a couple of days of his work. So that did happen, Yeah. So it wasn't really an on rails kind of thing. It doing it today, we probably would have done it much differently, but some of us were unfamiliar with those tools when we started. Patrick, when he joined, was a programmer, and I am one now in a professional capacity, but I had no idea what I was doing back then or dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
A lot, it turns out. This game is pretty huge, so we should probably just dive into it. I had no idea what I was getting into, but it is you never know with the fan game. I did no research. I knew nothing about it. Paul just is like this. Paul has these fan games. He's got a collection of them, and this is the one that's been on our radar for like 3 years. So wow. we were really super excited to get to it. But yeah, as soon as the game jumps in, it's immediately funny and immediately intense. So at the very beginning of the game, Vohaul returns.
It's a 20-minute intro, I think, somewhere. Like, did you run a timer or something? It is pretty long, so it kind of has to be funny.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
we were having so much trouble with that, speaking of the intro, because there is a lot of ground to cover, as you've already noted, because where Space Quest 6 disregarded the whole Beatrice time travel thing, we kind of needed, for Vohaul to return in a way that made sense, we needed to address it, and we needed to address what happens between Beatrice and Roger, where do they go from Space Quest 5, and there's just a ton of ground to cover. And I remember one time I can't remember who offered to do it. I think it was Chris Yushko who said, I'll this script is too long. I'll run it by some of my mates who are working with professional script writing, and he came back and said, they want us to remove the whole time travel bit with the child that has to be born and all of that, and we just kind of went, yeah, okay, that's probably not gonna happen.
Right. Usually at this point we kind of like tell people the plot of the game sort of thing, but instead of either of us doing it poorly, maybe be most appropriate for you to do it. I'm sure you have some sort of like elevator pitch absolutely burned in the back of your brain by now. So how would you describe the game?
Oh dear. Oh god. Oh no. Well, basically, Roger Wilco has been enjoying life. He's hesitant to marry the love of his life, Beatrice. Can I say her last name on the show? Wankmeister. I think Scott Murphy is still slightly embarrassed about that. He's having trouble reconciling the fact that he knows he has to marry her. He knows they need to have a son because he's been rescued by him before, but he also knows that something will happen to her because the last time he saw his son in the future, she was talking about her in the past tense. So they're enjoying some brief vacation away from StarCon when Roger is accosted by an ape man because it transpires that Vohaul has been resurrected as an unexpectedly crappy robot in the interim, and he wants revenge again, and the ape is basically dispatched to get Roger to go along with him. That doesn't go to plan, and Roger and B make off to the ice planet Radon, which is where Vohaul is now based, chiefly because it's more nice for Roger to square off against his arch nemesis rather than, face Beatrice's questions about why he hasn't gotten down on one knee yet. So obviously the worst comes to pass and Beatrice gets kidnapped, and I don't know how much you want me to take into detail because it's already starting to feel a bit long, but Roger basically traverses Radon and its moon, and with the aid of some of the local populace, dispatches of Vohaul and his diabolical moon bomb scheme to wreak havoc upon the universe. And this is where the game branches off. You can either leave Vohaul to die, or you can go the extra mile and reprogram him to be a good guy again. And the whole thing, if you do that, is capped by Roger and Beatrice's wedding and the revelation that Beatrice is indeed pregnant, but they are having twins.
Love that.
Ooh. I didn't know that was a real ending the other way, because I automatically choose of course we're going to sort out this Vohaul stuff. Yeah. Does it legit just can end the game right there?
You can end the game right there, and there's a small teaser ending with Vohaul that I'm not going to spoil. I am going to spoil that he doesn't die. He's left for dead, but he doesn't die. The funny thing is, when you mentioned Incinerations earlier, when I connected to this chat, and Chris Yushko, who did Incinerations, basically kind of resolved that is a sequel to the bad ending of Vohaul Strikes Back.
Ah, cool.
So I think most of us want the Vohaul turns good ending to be the canonical one, but there is a sequel to that non-canonical one, probably because we knew it was going to be controversial. I'm not going to say we received hate mail, but once people got wind of this whole idea of Vohaul being corrupted and becoming a good guy, we did get some angry posts in response to that. So we knew it was a controversial idea, which I always thought kind of silly, because Vohaul's kind of a cardboard character who's just, he's evil,
Right.
That's what he does.
Right, exactly. Why do you do bad things? Because I'm evil. Like, okay,
yeah.
That's the extent there.
Yeah, you added a bunch of depth to him, actually, which we'll get in later. But yeah, it's kind of cool. There was this really neat dynamic between Roger and Beatrice where she's like, she's really the one handling things. And he like, for example, when the monkeys come, he hides underneath the table and is like, oh, are they gone now? And she's like, don't worry. And that kind of plays through the whole game. Whenever they run into each other, she's just like, oh my God, would you just get out of my way so I can fix this shit? And it was really quite funny.
I think that's probably why people have referred to it as Monkey Island in space, because Roger is so stupid in this game, and in some ways I think we made him too stupid. If you play the original couple of Space Quest games by the two guys when they were a team before splitting up, you kind of realize he's more bumbling than anything else. He's not really a stupid guy. He just doesn't care. He's just kind of stumbling through it. But we kind of made him into more of a Guybrush Threepwood Curse of Monkey Island character who's just utterly incapable of handling the stuff that gets thrown at him.
I hesitate to jump so far later into the game, but just to tie into what you said there's one of my favorite, it's not even necessarily a joke, it's just like a framing. It's when you're already on the moon base and Roger's reunited with Beatrice, and he basically makes it clear that he's been walking around freely without any real issues. And she's like, what do you mean? Like, there's guards everywhere. And it was such a brilliant way to handle the way it was written. I thought was quite brilliant, because it was a great way of illustrating how Roger just kind of dumb lucks his way through things. Like, us, the player, as Roger, had no idea how much danger we were in, because Roger wouldn't have known, because it just seems to work out for him.
Like Inspector Gadget, totally.
Yeah, it was so
well,
good.
Something we made sure of, like consciously, is there's a ton of ways you can die in this game.
So loved
and that was
every one of
definitely
them.
deliberate, because like at the time when we started, people were of course already saying the adventure genre was dead, but right up until that point, it seemed like the winner between the Sierra versus LucasArts fight over, who has the best design, that seemed to be in LucasArts' court, if you ask me. That had kind of emerged as the preferred way to do adventure games, and of course you can't die in those. So we were missing the grotesque deaths that have always been a hallmark of the Space Quest series, to me at least.
Yeah. I had so much fun with the deaths. I think one of the ways in which you guys handled it that was really fun, and I thought quite brilliant as well, was the dialogue-based deaths. That choosing the wrong options, going down the wrong paths. I think there was two parts where the dialogue it's really quite fun. It's set up to be kind of a death trap. Like, there's only one way out, and you have to die a bunch of times getting there. I really like that, to the degree that I made a note. Like, the character in the games that I work on, is the main character's name is Oliver, and I made a note saying I need to kill Oliver more. Like, this is so much fun. This is such a great way to handle it,
especially with the try game.
I hated beta testing the T puzzle in the boot camp. Right. The guy who's trying, and that's definitely a Father Ted reference. If you've ever watched that Irish show, there's this housekeeper called Mrs. Doyle who will tell anyone that they must have a cup of tea, even if they refuse in the bluntest terms. Like, even the one line that's lifted directly is the line about Roger having an allergic reaction, a fatal allergic reaction to tea. That's lifted directly from Father Ted. So
that's brilliant.
But I hated beta testing it because I could never remember what the right choices were.
I took it like an IQ test. I wrote notes. I did a lot of handwritten notes on this, and I literally was like, that is a yes, that is a no. Wow. That is a yes, that is a no, because I like doing stuff like that. So I want to right away, this game establishes that the narrator itself is a character in the game, and this really cool way of breaking the fourth wall that I've never, like, I know the narrator interacts with Roger, especially in like Space Quest 4, in this really catty back and forth, but it's special. It's like you're talking to the narrator, but also yourself, and it's so impressive how it was pulled off.
That's another one of those things where I'm thinking, it's so cool to hear you guys enjoyed that, because in retrospect, I think we really overdid it. Like, there is some of that stuff in Space Quest 4. I think most of it might actually be in Space Quest 6, and that's kind of the template for it. We went a bit further with it, obviously, especially later in the game. But I'm really happy you guys enjoyed that, because when I look at it now, I'm like, it's funny, but is it Space Quest? I don't know.
No, it's good. Honestly, I see it as you guys just you really like leaned into it and owned it. Like I think the bit you might have even been referencing there at towards the end of the game, where it goes quite far and the narrator's kind of sent off on his own, and or I guess I might be conflating two of them, but because at one point he kind of goes and tells Beatrice something, but I thought it was worth it, man. It was so funny. It literally had made me thought. I kind of wish that Space Quest 4 and 6 had leaned into it as much as you guys did. It brought the narrator even more to life for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I mean, you can always look at it as a tribute to the late great Gary Owens. I mean, not late when we released the game, obviously, but it would have been so cool. Like, it would have been my dream if he had been able to read those, like, how many is it, 3,000 odd lines. Probably wasn't going to be able to in any case, even before passing, but that would have been so cool, because I'm sure he could have had a ton of fun with it. Like, the amount of stuff he has done aside from Space Quest that has this completely nutty, absurd, self-referential kind of humor. It would have been amazing if he'd been able to do that.
I agree. There's nothing like him at all. Oh, and then right away in the beginning of the game, the whole copy protection joke, Roger's trying to get into the computer, and it's kind of like, you need to go to the 1000th page and this letter and this word, and he looks it up, and instantly making fun, because like the first game I ever played by Sierra was King's Quest 4, and immediately you're like, the third chapter, second page, third paragraph, first word, and it just brought me right back. I loved that. Let's see. So, the back and forth. Oh, yeah, and I realized immediate death upon leaving the ship by electrocution. I was like, oh, we're going to be like that, are we? And then you gave the try again function, and I'm like, you mean I can keep trying and keep dying and feel safe in doing so? All of a sudden, I have all that confidence playing the game.
Yeah, I don't remember who had us make that concession. I vaguely remember that we talked about it, are we going to make this like old school, or are we gonna play nice? And eventually I guess it came out in favor of the second approach, where sure, you can save and restore as much as you'd like. You can practice save early, save often, but we're not gonna punish you for trying out stuff. It still has to be fun to die in this game.
Yeah, that was the way. That was the right way around it. Nobody's. I mean, it might have been a little different in 2011 or so, but it's like nobody saves anymore at all ever. So it would catch them off guard. And then, sorry, Anna, I left you hanging a second ago with a little bit of silence because I was trying to find the effing note for that, but I just found it was what you were referencing with the copyright, because that made me laugh out loud really hard, because he's like, you have to go to page 82 to paragraph blah blah blah, and he opens the book up and he's like, there's no page numbers.
Right.
And I was like, man, that's so good. It's plausible too, right? It's just like, man, imagine if they didn't put page numbers, and you have to count 82 pages. That was so good.
Well, there's an example in that scene where we definitely made him too dumb, because I think it fades to black and says a couple of minutes later or a couple of hours later, and he's just made it to the next page at that point. Maybe that's overdoing it a little, poor guy.
No, it fit. To me, it fits so well. And then immediately you have to pick up a piece of glass, and I was hoping you'd have to, because I'm like such a callback to the first game. How, like, I was talking to, I think it was Stephen Alexander, and he said that he was playing the game and he was stuck for like months on the not understanding to go back and pick up the piece of glass from the windshield until a friend at school finally came up and was like, oh man, this is what you do. So it was such a perfect fit right at the beginning.
Well, this is definitely the right place for a spoiler, because I mentioned there were two different endings before, but there is in fact a third ending that doesn't make a lick of sense. But I think the idea behind the glass came from Andres, and we made a secret developer room in the game that you can access if you there's a tram in Vohaul's Fortress on Radon, and if you type the correct code into that, you wind up in a room where you can talk to all of us, the developers. And he mentions the glass in there and asks Roger, have you tried showing it to everyone? So basically that's the idea of it. If you show this completely useless otherwise piece of glass to absolutely every single character in the game, or as close to it as you can comfortably get, I think there is some leeway allowed. Weird stuff will happen by the end of the game.
Amazing.
Okay, now I have to replay it. Okay.
How do you is there a hint, or how do you get the tram code?
I think it's hidden in there's a sliding tiles puzzle you get from the ape kit at the ape-man boot camp, and I think it's hidden in that.
Okay, cool.
So if you solve that puzzle, you get the secret key.
Awesome. Okay.
Again, this is an example of someone deciding at some point that we were going to play nice. The original design is drafted up mostly by Samuel Lawson and Benjamin Vigent and myself was a lot less forgiving. But the sliding tile puzzle is optional, and showing the glass to everyone is optional. And if you die, you get to try again. All of that. I wish I could remember who decided we should play nice, because it wasn't in the cards to begin with. Like the original Vohaul Strikes Back as written in 2002 was not only going to be a lot shorter, the moon wasn't going to play a role at all, but it was basically Space Quest 4.5, to a certain extent. It was playing off of that style.
Yeah, as far as not playing nice, like in your defense, in 2003, adventure games as a whole hadn't started playing nice yet.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
That's a good point. It was right in the 2003 was right in the middle of the dead zone.
Right.
I think that they don't care about us adventure gamers anymore. Everyone just wants shoot 'em up games kind of feeling that I was having at the time. So
yeah, it was so funny by the time, like, you really got an idea of what had happened in the scene, because there was like nothing going on when we started the project. And I hope I'm not insulting any indies or anything, but to me, being stuck in small town Denmark on dial-up, there was nothing going on. And then by the time we released the game 9 years later, we did win an AGS award for Best Supporting Character, where we had asked them to consider Rodney the redneck orangutan. And at that point, I just remember that Jim and I, by Watch It Eye, mopped the floor with every other single game. It was our award was, I think, one of the only ones that didn't go to Jim and I. It was incredible. And it was like, what? But isn't this supposed to be dead? I hadn't really followed the indies, so I was in for a really nice surprise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a good time. So you end up on this like crazy planet, and randomly in the planet there's a beach resort.
Right.
With this like Marvin the Android kind of style, with a bit more cynicism and sort of anger in him, robot hanging out, and that was just so much fun and so satisfying to finally figure out how to get into the store.
Yeah, I think he was in some of the earliest scripts, if I'm not misremembering, but the part got vastly extended.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're not very nice to this robot in the end, which is also, it's satisfying. You have to take him out like Wizard of Oz style with the witch, and and there was a few moments like that in this game, like, oh no, it's my weakness. How did you know?
Yeah. Well, he's pretty miserable, so like I would argue Roger does him a favor.
Right. Yeah.
It's not good business. He's not happy to be there.
Yeah. You guys, writing wise, did such a wonderful job with signaling to the player. Like the robot's a great example of that, because I came to the conclusion that I should essentially terminate him by one of the lines the robot said previous to that moment, which was basically like, I would kill you if I could. And I'm like, well, all right, if he's going to play like that, then I guess we'll play like that. So use object on robot, it works, and it makes sense. Like, yeah, there you go. I got him before he got me, sort of thing.
Yeah, here's the special thing about our playthroughs is Paul and I, we liked this game so much that we decided we were not going to use walkthroughs and we were going to figure it out. I don't know about you, how many hours it took. I think it took me 13 hours or give or take around there.
Maybe 12 or 14. But like and speaking for Anna too, we both looked at, interacted, and tasted everything. Like this is I mean, this is just a dream coming true for us. Like my game, the Phantom Fellows is in a really similar spirit to this, in the sense that you can look at and interact with absolutely everything. There's no taste everything, but because mine you can play as a ghost or the breather, the alive guy, I still feel the pain because I had to do 2 interacts for every single object and 2 look-ats for every single object, leading to like I think 18,000 lines of dialogue or something insane, which I know Vohaul is pretty close to as well.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I have to give a ton of credit not only to the people who wrote most of it, I've already done that, but also to our background artist, Martin de Montfort, who is just like, he drew every single background of this game with the most vague of specifications. So like, for instance, everything you see in the beach resort, that's him, you know. Please put a few in-jokes in there, and he sends this room that's just packed with all kinds of stuff, including stuff we couldn't make out what was. So I don't know if there's like one item in the counter that Roger says kind of looks like a cross between a blueberry pie and an octopus or something. And I think that's one of my lines, because I was like, what the hell is this? I don't know what this object is. I'm going to write it as if no one knows what this is.
Oh, and you do the callback with the AV normal, you know, from the Young Frankenstein, and then it's like, oh, wait, we already did this joke in one of the other games. It's just so perfect.
Yeah.
And then you've got your Sam and Max, you've got the bunny, you've got Brian the dog, you've got Cartman and Pac-Man, and just all these little references. I just wanted to look at everything. It was so fun right away.
Yeah, I mean, that's the benefit of having people like Andres and Chris and Martin on the team, because between them there was like so much of a pop culture knowledge. You know, I keep blowing smoke up Chris's proverbial ass, but something you can get on his website, and maybe you'll have a bit of trouble getting it to run, but he actually, if you remember Click and Play, you know, the old utility for making really, really simple games, he did a full-on Monkey Island 2 remake in the spirit of Mission Impossible 2. So it's MI2. And it's just the craziest. Like, I wish there were YouTube playthroughs of this thing, but it's pretty obscure because, again, at the very least, you probably have to load up a virtual machine to get these to run. But it's like Guybrush explodes a backhoe. And I even think, no, that's Incinerations that has a reference to that, not Vohaul Strikes Back, but that's just the start of it. If you ever wanted to see Guybrush Threepwood wearing sunglasses, going guns akimbo, you need to try to get that game to run. So that's, you know, the kind of writer we're dealing with here.
Well, and a shout out to I think you said Martin with the background art, because it's absolutely gorgeous. His work specifically with lighting is mesmerizing. Like every single scene, I would hone into like the main light source or the accents, and you know, he would have like soft, gentle red lighting reflecting off the tiles on the floor. Like, it's just, I'm a sucker for good lighting, and man, he makes each scene fun to look at.
It's so amazing because he was there on day one and he was there when we released it. He never quit the team or went silent or anything like that. He was just always there, and you could always send him, you know, the latest script or whatever, and, you know, something would come back the next day. I don't know how he did that, but that was amazing. And, you know, we were pushing his backgrounds hard as I don't want to say selling point, but, you know, we were hyping that up whenever we were sharing updates about the game early on, and I still think it's amazing. And you know, the really fun thing is looking back at some of the earliest artwork he did for us, because he was always really good and he always had a style, but he got so much better over those 9 years. Right. I can't believe it looking at it.
Oh, that's cool to be able to see it that way. Right. How many, I mean, there's a ton of rooms in this game. Do you know how many, roughly speaking, there are?
I think we wrote it on our website, which is kind of a weird thing to do, but that's the mid 2000s for you. I can't remember how many it is off the top of my head, but if you go to sqvsb.com, I think it says so, and I think it says so on the Wikipedia article as well.
Cool.
Like someone thought that would add value,
Right.
That's millennials growing up with replay value for you, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I did the same thing on launch with my game originally. The tweet was like 18,000 lines of dialogue, X amount of rooms, and it wasn't advisable in hindsight.
Before we had achievements, we had like coffee machine talk where it would be like, "Hey, did you trigger that? No, I didn't. Gotta go back and do that."
Mm-hmm. So you end up, after all of this and the back and forth and dispatching the robot, you end up in this colony of these absolutely adorable little creatures. Now, I'm hoping it's furcuns. Is that how it's
had
pronounced?
some trouble with the naming. And this is what happens when you have a bunch of people whose first language is not English writing the game. Because originally it was supposed to be Huthcuns, and Martin miswrote it in an email at one point, and you can probably guess what he wrote. And we kind of went, well, we knew enough English at that point, all of us, between us, to go, oh shit. So it was like, what are these guys going to be called? And we had like a literal brainstorming thread with the most preposterous of suggestions. And eventually we just kind of, we had always taken inspiration from the pink ones in Space Quest 2, but obviously missing the memo that it's not pinkuns, it's pink ones. The way that's written, so we just kind of went, furcuns. We'll have to, to the clean person, everything is clean. We'll have to think that way.
Yeah, I like that. And it was cute. Any game that says kitten caboodle somewhere in it is awesome. It right away hits you with the good phrasing and then goes right into the password, because you're going to eventually try to get into the Thieves Guild, which is you have to say to everybody, do you have any Grey Poupon? Which is funny on a few levels, because Paul and I had a conversation about it recently, but also as it refers to the Schwarzenfish, which is the code from Quest for Glory. It's really drawing it in, because in Quest for Glory you have to go up to each person and do the thief sign, and everyone's just kind of looking at you like you're weird. And it was a great play on the Quest for Glory. I loved that.
Right. Well, I mean, that's an example of internet culture bleeding into this game too. And I learned a lot, working on it, because I'd never seen those Grey Poupon commercials, but someone on the team had. I think it was a writer we had attached at one point, a guy from South Africa with a really wicked sense of humor. I don't know his real name, but he went and is credited as Pistoni de San. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he would just bring this really weird stuff to the table, like Grey Poupon, if I'm not misremembering, and Ed Wood references and all kinds of crazy stuff. So like that was like an example of the stuff you could do on the internet back in like the early 2000s, isn't it? I mean, boot up Soulseek or Kazaa Lite or LimeWire and download weird, funny commercials and that sort of thing.
Oh, totally. And then I like it because if you touch Rolf, he's one of the other thieves. He's sitting at the bar. It says, you wave at your new friend, but he's totally unresponsive, and it seems like the hug you crave is out of the question. It reminded me, Paul, of your writing in The Phantom Fellows. Actually, there was a lot of vibes. Like, I'm shocked you never played this game, Paul, before you made your game, because there's so many funny, irreverent sort of connections that just show that the both of you had the same passion and background for the same types of games when you made them. You both had that in your heads.
Yeah, there was so many different lines, especially in the flavor text, where I felt so... there's an insufferable thing people say nowadays, and I'm going to have to say because I can't think of anything better. I felt so seen. I felt really heard, awesome. You guys. But it was just like... there's this certain amount of insanity, I think, that you succumb to when you're writing just, thousands of lines of flavor text. Like, wow, how am I going to make a light bulb funny? Right. And you enter this weird space where, I don't know, you start to, like, I don't know, maybe you project a personality onto the object and then write it that way. And I just saw so much of that in this game where I tried to articulate it at the time, and I can't do it now either, but it was just so incredibly like, I've been there at 2:00 in the morning trying to make my 37th object funny that night and pulling it off only by being able to anthropomorphize it and imagine it as a lonely thing on a shelf or whatever the case was. It was,
Yeah, that's funny. Like there's obviously also that of wanting to link every goddamn thing in this game to some bit of sci-fi pop culture or just, pop culture. Like I'll give you an example since we're in the Thieves Guild section anyway, which is when you break into the hut to get the plans that the spy inside the Firkins camp has obtained, the fortress layout. The one puzzle that survives that I wrote is in there, which is the bit where you make up a ghost from a flashlight and a vacuum cleaner and a sheet, and that's just brave little toaster 101.
Right.
That's my childhood making it into this game. That's the one thing I wrote that escaped scrutiny.
Right. No, I caught that too because I absolutely love Brave Little Toaster.
We've talked about
scarred
that
my child
movie
with it too. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That air conditioner.
God.
The horrifying air conditioner and the heartbreaking rose that dies on its own. Yeah. Still getting over that one. Yeah, in that room, I found my notes for that room. There's the Homestar guitar, which was great, and I really like Farmsworthy and physics. See, I don't have notes for my playthrough. I just have like 82 lines that I loved and wrote down. That's essentially my notes here. But yeah, there's some great ones in that room.
Yeah, that's what I said. I absolutely loved the puzzle of Murph getting scared of the ghost and using the vacuum cleaner with the flashlight and getting into the safe, and the whole forgot the password thing was brilliant. That was my note.
That was super fun. Yeah, get to set your own password. Yeah, that was so fun.
I love how you get a different message whenever you click on Roger with your hand icon. It took me a bit to discover that. That was fun because you're always getting in the way of whatever you're trying to do anyway, so you might as well hear something funny when you click there.
Right. I think that's definitely Space Quest 4 at play, because as soon as you know Scott Murphy is the writer and you have a lick icon, weird stuff is gonna happen.
Right. Yeah, there's so much respect to the craft here in this. Like it's just my kind of adventure game where you can. So many of my notes are, thank you for letting me do this. Like for the section we're on now, like the icy portion of the game here, the icy. I started saying it again as if I could improve on my first attempt there. I still can't, but it is icy.
Right, the slippery portion of it. No, wait, that's worse.
Right, it's cold. It's definitely cold. It used to be water, but you can walk off a cliff, and it's just like thank you for letting me walk off a cliff. A little bit, not very much later in the game here, you let me lick the fence and die. These are thank yous in my notes. Like, thank you so much. I died licking the fence like I wanted to. Like, it's so good. So much fun.
Truly appreciate it. Like, again, I can't claim credit with a lot of this except to encourage, I definitely encourage the idea that you should die in this game, and you should die a lot. And if you want to lick the electric fence, more power to you. We're not going to tell you shouldn't do that. Just go for it.
I really do think it had influence on me going forward with development of the next two games I'm working on, because in my first game I made it so that there's one death per day. Like, my game's broken up into days, like Gabriel Knight cases, whatever. And the reason I kept it to one per day is because I'm a solo dev, so I was like, I'm just going to do one death animation. This stuff all takes like a really long time to do. So I was like, I'll just do one per day, and that way I don't overload myself with animations. But seeing how many deaths that you can die in this game effectively and that are really funny and don't require any animation at all was a total inspiration to me. I'm like, you don't necessarily need the animation for some of these deaths. Like, a lot of it's just implied. It can even be funnier if it's just implied. So I'm taking that forward with me. Like, it might be
nice.
Yeah, it might be some more deaths coming up in mine as well.
Yeah, I mean, I have to give credit to someone who wasn't involved with the game, and I'm sorry, but I don't remember her real name, but her online handle, going from way back to the beginning of the Space Quest community, was Jaycee, and she had this website called The Many Deaths of Roger Wilco, where she had gathered screenshots and information about every single death in the mainline games.
Wow.
So we took a lot of inspiration just noting how much stuff you can do to kill yourself in the original games, and some of it is most definitely deserved and some of it isn't, but of course Mark and Scott and Josh went out of their way to make sure that even when it wasn't deserved, it was funny, which is a unique trait of the Space Quest games to me. Absolutely. Like in King's Quest and Police Quest, and I never really played Quest for Glory all that much, but it feels like in all of those games it's like a chore to die. And Leisure Suit Larry has some funny deaths and some absolutely unfair ones that have aged a bit poorly. Looking at you, Leisure Suit Larry, too, but Space Quest was always funny,
Yeah, the deaths were almost arguably the highlight at some points.
Yeah.
Yep, they really were. The tea thing, I know what you said it referred to, but of course, me being a Hitchhiker's Guide, it made me think of Arthur and tea and all that side of things too. But I think I'm just always looking for Hitchhiker's references.
Yeah, projecting it onto you.
It is, okay? It just is.
Right.
So you end up, after you go through all of that, you end up getting, is this, I think the penguins. Do you do the penguins before? No, that's after you get into the camp, isn't it? So you have to get into the monkeys camp. Right, right. And you learn that mustaches are a myth.
Yeah, right. And that's definitely, someone on the team had played Gabriel Knight 3, I would
right.
That makes sense. So I had a question for you. In the camp, there's a secret closet, and you open it up to continue the storyline, essentially to get the doctor the keys so he can leave. But what do you think was in that secret closet?
Oh no, I have absolutely no idea. Like, the main conceit of that was obviously Ned, and this is actually very funny to me because you mentioned this game being an inspiration to you, which I truly appreciate. But something hashtag second language, something that threw me for a loop when I played Return to Monkey Island is there is a Ned in that game, a Ned Filigree, who is an accountant who has had some dubious business going with Stan, the used ship salesman. And I'm sorry if I'm spoiling the game, but it has been out for a few years. You should play it. It's awesome. But the Ned of Return to Monkey Island is a dead ringer for Ned in Vohaul Strikes Back, and I have no idea if that's conscious. I would think not, but it's it's like that meme. It's weird that it happened twice. But of course, the original Ned in our game is a reference to Ted, the poor lawyer from Scrubs, and I don't know what's in the closet. Definitely a lot of incriminating paperwork. I kinda want to make a joke about the times we live in, but it would get too political real quick, so let's not.
Yeah, that's fair. But it was great. I mean, the kid monkey and getting that whole puzzle sorted, making his dad deal with him, hitting the alarm, everything about it leading up to the doctor's checkup, which, by the way, oy vey, was amazing.
Right, yeah.
I think that's one of Chris's, if I remember correctly. The whole checkup scene is his, because that's the kind of absurd implied humor he would go for. Like, it's the boy moment always makes me laugh. Like, just how the hell do you come up with that? I don't want to take responsibility for it. It's not me.
Oh my God, with the crying baby, and partway through you're like, oh my God, did he just give birth? Like, it leaves you so wondering what's going on in there.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned in passing that Chris is behind Incinerations, because I didn't know that, but now that I know one of the writers from this game made it, I'm absolutely playing Incinerations.
We were kind of doing it at the same time, like, eventually, because Incinerations, like, there's a really funny story to this, which is that in the original Incinerations, because there was an original project going all the way back to like 97 or something, still Chris doing the writing and the artwork, I believe, and actually Trolls Plymert, our mutual friend, doing the score. That didn't lead to much of anything. It had a website which was still active in the early 2000s, so like around 2002, 2003, I approached Chris, sent him an email and went, can I help out with what you're doing, or will you join my game? Or, got a very lengthy reply back that, hey, the game is defunct, but thank you for your interest. Eventually, it came to pass that he joined our project around 2006, 2007, I believe, which I was just ecstatic about because, as I mentioned, you should go check out his website. It's boxofmystery.com. He has all these incredible games and cartoons and memes and stuff that just go to show how imaginative he is and how effortlessly funny he is. So I was like, elated we were getting this guy on the team. I loved his stuff. And then I guess in some way inspired by what we were doing on Vohaul Strikes Back, he kind of rebooted the old Incinerations project and turned it into something different and, asked me if I was going to contribute some of the music for it. And I did. And some of the cues that you hear in Vohaul Strikes Back are actually composed for Incinerations originally and vice versa. So there is a bit of deliberate continuity in those games in that you've got shared music between them. You have references to Vohaul Strikes Back and Incinerations. You have the bad VSB ending that Incinerations will play off on. So we kind of made a small effort to have some continuity between those games. And I just find it incredible that Chris was working on these two games at the same time for the last few years of development of both of them.
Oh, that's so cool. All right, I'm going to play
You've created your own universe, inside the universes.
We tried to. Before there was a cinematic universe, there was, no, but I mean, that was the idea, let's try linking this stuff up together because at the time, no one was working on the Space Quest IP and, shamefully, no one is even today, but the two guys were still split up. Space Venture was a few years away, the launch of it.
Let's do a little side quest here. So I'm going to start out by reading my second and third note that I wrote down as I was playing this. My second note here says the music is an absolute banger. And then my third note says, oh, it's Frederik. Nice. Let him know I said that before seeing that he did it.
well, not really. Actually, this is where it gets a bit embarrassing. Like it's always important for me to give credit where credit is due. But we had a lot of composers working on this game. But the thing that I did towards the end was, like, some of the stuff we had received way back when as MIDI files, and some of the stuff we had received was basically home recordings. And then, stuff like what you hear in the beach resort and, that sort of location, that was done by one guy who turned in a lot of awesome stuff and then just kind of disappeared. So my job was kind of making the pieces fit together, and some of that entailed writing brief pieces for locations where we had no music, such as Murph's hut in the caves, and taking the MIDI files and loading them into a DAW and making digital audio out of them using whatever plugins I had, and basically trying to transcribe the stuff that didn't quite cut it audio quality-wise. So stuff like the theme of the henchman, Nebuchadnezzar, that was submitted by a guy who called himself Ragged, and he wrote some awesome music, but it was like home recordings where there's like one channel of static and the other channel is music. So I listened to his cues and transcribed them as best as he could. So I would consider myself more of a musical director on this project than a composer. I did write some stuff, but it was mainly with the aim of making everyone else sound good, like Mark Siebert would say.
Right. Well, you absolutely nailed it. The music is truly exceptional.
I was playing it in the kitchen on my laptop so that I could play it while I was doing everything else. And so when I'd pause it, the music would just be going and I'd just be doing my thing in the kitchen, and I just left it on playing, and it would just get stuck in my head. It was so satisfying and so good. And it's still, nice. Even now, as I'm thinking about the different parts of the game, I've connected the musical pieces to it. I loved all of it.
That's awesome. Like, I think that's something that the Space Quest games did really, really well, at least the ones with sound card support. Like, the scores are really memorable. You know, and Ken Allen and Neil Grandstaff are definitely heroes of mine. For, you know, obvious reasons. You know, we appeared on stage with them in Era 47 last year at Portland Retro Gaming Expo, and they're awesome people. But they wrote some incredibly memorable music as well. It's just a joy to listen to. I had the chance to talk to Mark Siebert and his wife Debbie as part of that event too. And one thing I said is, you know, obviously, you know, you can put on an album, you can load up your MP3 player, as was the style of the times. But given that these games had puzzles that would sometimes leave you stumped for like hours, potentially, their music is what we listen to, you know. We listen to their music on a loop for hours, so it had to be good. It had to be memorable, you know. And I wanna say I'm a fan of the Beatles. I wanna say I'm a fan of Miles Davis, you know, whatever. But I think I've listened more to Ken Allen over the course of my life than anyone else.
Yeah.
No, it's so true. So back in the game, I loved the general. I mean, I loved the interactions. Everything you do when you talk to him, if you do it wrong, he just ups and shoots you. I think for me to figure out the puzzle, he probably killed me 20 times.
Oh yeah, that's the colonel, right? The general is Forksmith. That's right. We have a caste system going into this, like you know, definitely Planet of the Apes inspired. You know, the chimps have something to do. The orangutans have something to do. Right. The baboons, the gorillas. You know.
Right.
You only saw one type of ape man in Space Quest 2, and since then you didn't see him. Then it became the sequel Police, but we wanted to return to the ape men, but I don't know whose idea it was to broaden the palette, because it would have been boring to look at chimp people throughout.
Right.
I think that may have been Chris Yushko as well, because at that point he was drawing all the sprites, and to my recollection, we didn't have any Ape-Man sprites prior to that. We had a Nightmare Fuel model done up in Kai's Poser by Chris Mining, who never got clothed. So I'll leave you to think of that, like big bulging eyes, naked chimp. Fortunately, that never made it into any build of the game. But then Chris Yushko came along and did all these different Ape-Men.
Best monkey related line in the game, I thought, was the two guards were talking, because I didn't write the actual line down, but the two guards are talking about how they should go home and type out Shakespeare for a while. Which is just brilliant.
Really?
Man.
I don't even remember that one. That's good.
It's so good. It's like, Brian Cox, would have, Infinite Monkeys would eventually write out a Shakespeare thing. It was so good, man.
Yeah, they did a whole song about it called Monkey with a Typewriter, which is really hard to find, but really good if you can find it.
That's the thing that's so joyous about this game for me. Like, it's so massive, and the people who worked on it turned in some absolutely brilliant stuff, and some of it I've yet to see myself. You know, that line was definitely new to me, and it's been a couple of years since we released it, to put it mildly.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. So there is some quality of life stuff in here. Once you do manage to make it into the sewers the first time, every time after that you have this like makeshift gas mask that you make out of the doctor's mask and an air freshener, so you don't get killed by the terrible farting beasts. And the second time you go in, he just automatically puts his mask on, which was a breath of fresh air. I was like, oh gosh, I got it. Nope, it doesn't.
Literally a breath of fresh air. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you can tell it. You can tell the project was started by a bunch of teenagers, right, with all the fart jokes. I think we had more of them originally, but the worst ones got purged.
At the same time that they're still funny.
They are.
I still just, when I see, I have an 11-year-old, when he laughs at like a dick or a fart joke, I'm like, when you're 42, you're still gonna laugh at these. Like they hold up, man. It's crazy.
They really do. They really, really do. Because you end up in
that's good at least.
You end up in the penguin place, which also I loved because you kind of have to essentially not be able to pass it to figure out how to pass it. And it was a really, really cool puzzle ending with the umbrella. I really liked that.
Well, that's definitely also a place where I think, did we go too far? I don't know. I'll let everyone else be the, judge of that. But having a character whose sole purpose is to reference Danny DeVito when Batman Returns, I don't want to take credit, but I think we're the only ones who have done an adventure game to ever do that.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, and so that is where at least for me, the one and only bug I encountered in the whole game, which was enough so that I had to get Paul to send me a save file and actually update my Scum VM. But it was, if you end up in the sewer and by chance you don't happen to have, say, the umbrella or something else you need, you're stuck standing outside the sewer and you can't move.
Oh dear, I didn't even know that. We should fix
Paul,
that.
You came across that same bug there. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. I guess AGS wise, he's just off the walkable area, I would guess.
Yeah.
Right.
That was consistent with any reload or playthrough. But again, we were able to fix it and get through it. It's the only problem I had with the whole game. But it was consistent enough that it's probably fixable.
Wow. Yeah, I think the problem is that, Patrick may correct me, but I'm pretty sure the source code is lost at this point. Except for an old backup or something. I don't know. He's way more competent than me at programming, and I say so as a programmer. He's probably figured it out. I know the old repository that we had doesn't exist anymore, but it's probably been archived on a hard drive somewhere. I don't think anyone is rushing into to try to load the code into the latest version of AGS. But right. on a rainy day, someone may try.
Yeah, the Anna, you mentioned the umbrella. I want to say parasol because just this week I learned that that's what a parasol is. So my inner child wants to show that off for no reason. That's
so weird. Like the word parasol is just ubiquitous here. That's what we use when we go to the beach.
Really?
It is. Yeah, it's made its way into Danish. So I'm like, and a drinks umbrella, an umbrella. What? But
right.
That's where you learn something as a non-native speaker, certainly.
So, sorry, I was going to go off track really quickly. So I've been studying Italian for the last 2 years, which gave me such a huge respect for you and anybody else that speaks 2 languages. And I'm just curious on a personal level, during this interview right now, since it's an English interview, are you thinking of what you're going to say in English, or are you translating?
I think I am. I think I've been speaking. I certainly don't pride myself on being fluent, and there's definitely an accent. But
you sound fluent. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I think whenever I am speaking English, I am thinking in English, and that. As far as other languages go, that kind of leaves me at a disadvantage. I used to study French, that is long gone. I made a tactical mistake in high school because we could select between French and Spanish, and seeing as I'd already had French, I thought, hey, I'll skip learning a new language. I'll continue with what I know and hopefully get some good grades. Only for me to eventually marry a woman from Uruguay who also speaks Danish fluently and English, but.
Oh, cool.
I should have chosen Spanish. It's so hard.
I get that. Jeez. Oh, the other thing I really like before the penguin place is if you try putting the soda can into the gears, because I click everything on everything all the time, but you do it before you know that you have to, the game counters it and says, hey, why would you want to sabotage a potentially harmless device? That was brilliant.
Right.
Yeah,
it is also the clue.
That's something that I think Sierra games would let you do, solve a puzzle before you really knew what you were doing, and that's somehow not as satisfying, is it? Some of us would reach for a walkthrough when we got lost, and other people would try to click everything on everything, and eventually you just kind of work it out, and you kind of have to reverse engineer in your head how that would make sense. So I think that's like Andres and Chris again, making sure that it would, even in this weird universe, stuff would make sense, as absurd as it may seem.
Yeah.
Because they did that in Old Skies. I had already played through a part of the game, but I restored back to a previous game, and so I knew a code for a door before I was supposed to know it, and I just changed my order. So when I tried putting the code in, the game's like, I don't think there's any way you could possibly know that. So we're just going to pretend it didn't happen at all. And then it just reset. So you had to go through the proper process first. I'm like, I love the little bit of self-awareness in these games.
That's definitely a good Dave Gilbert joke.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, nothing better than an adventure game that's accounted for the thing you're doing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, after the penguin is one more
question. Yeah. Did one of the penguins crow like a crow? Because I heard the sound of a crow when the penguins started making their noise, and I was like, hang on, what does a penguin sound like?
That's great.
I mean, none of us are zoologists. I think we were just scouring freesound.org at that point. I don't think we did so deliberately, but I can hear the sound in my mind right now. And that's probably a crow.
In hindsight, that might have been a crow.
Yeah,
might have been. Good. Okay, now you can say, because after you skateboard on a penguin and do that little timed puzzle, which took me a while.
That's just it. That's the note I have is in all caps lock. They just let me ride a penguin to my death. That was amazing. I was so excited about that. It was so, because obviously the first time or two, three, you don't realize you have to aim for the ladder. Let's say, and he just heroically rides this penguin to his death. I loved it.
Right. Like a very early example of a quick time event, I guess.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's one or two. Well, I don't know, maybe more. There's a few QuickTime events in the game, and I thought they were all a benefit. Like they were all fun. Really this game pulls off things that other games have struggled to do. Like I can't really recall a QuickTime event being a benefit to the game outside of this one. Like it was actually a rewarding solution to the puzzle. Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, thank you. I mean, I love the one where Beatrice is wrestling the evil henchman Nebuchadnezzar, and Roger's just standing there.
Right.
You actually have an ample time window to do all sorts of stuff that's not going to help her until he gains the upper hand and throws her off the cliff.
Right.
Yeah, that part was great. And just the way they introduced the idea of the moon bomb, because it is kind of ridiculous, and the way that everybody talks about it is awfully ridiculous. When you get out of jail, you get afterwards you get captured and you get put in the jail in the fortress, which is cool. But anyways, you go to get, after you escape, your extra inventory items back, and it's like, here, you get most of your stuff back, but I'm sure you didn't really need the rest of it anyways. And I loved that, because Paul and I, we've even talked about it on episodes. What do you do with extraneous inventory items? Like, do you just throw them all away immediately? And you did it in a game, like a fourth wall breaking way. It was fun, and it really hit home.
That's kind of like, that's definitely a Curse of Monkey Island influence, I think, on the part of whoever wrote that. I can't remember the exact item right now, but no doubt you've played through the first act of it, where the LeChuck's ship that you're on capsizes, and you have this, it's coming back to me, you have a cutlass, which is an awesome thing to have in a pirate adventure game, but the first thing Guybrush says after the cutscene where the ship capsizes is, hey, I lost my cool cutlass when the ship capsized.
Right.
So it's like that sort of thing, the game makes a decision to get rid of extraneous inventory items, because of course you can't have a cutlass in a Monkey Island game. That would make the whole thing too easy.
Yeah, you just go around killing everybody. Oh, and I should mention before this event, what precipitates it is a holographic ending of the game. But you don't I thought it was the end, right? You're like, oh, here's Vohaul, here's the thing, you're going to rescue the girl. Y'all did that on purpose.
Yeah, and that was the true ending at one point. Not the way that it's done up now with the Firkins hostage and the Princess Leia bikini. But
so
originally, Vohaul was going to have a big throne room, like a robot room in the fortress, and that was going to be where you confronted him. So the original game was surface of the ice planet, crawling into the fossil's eye, which is one of the earliest things, and I think that's the case of something being influenced by Martin's artwork, because it was hey, we have this big gaping socket in this eye socket in this fossil, let's have him crawl in there to the caves, and at that point it's really Space Quest 1 on ice, right? More or less desert. Originally, I think in the earliest design documents, it was another desert planet. And then someone went, well, they didn't do ice in Space Quest, and there's Hoth in The Empire Strikes Back, so let's do that, Okay, it turned into an ice planet pretty quickly and had a name change from Xenon to Radon. But originally it was just that, surface, caves, boot camp, ship goes to you could like stow away on a ship and crash land in front of the fortress, go into the fortress, end game. That was basically going to be it. Okay. So it was going to be a pretty brief game that took a lot on the surface level from Space Quest 4. Like Vohaul wound up having this Wizard of Oz type fortress that's kind of reminiscent of an ice crystal version of Emerald City, but originally it was just a big black supercomputer dome, not too dissimilar from the one you've seen on Xenon in Space Quest 12.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Whether it might make coincidental sense, but I had a feeling. I can't articulate where the feeling came from either, but I had a feeling that once I got through the penguins that I'd be heading into like the final act of the game, which wasn't the case at all to my delight. But yeah, I kind of sensed that this was going to be the end, and then I don't know, maybe there's an argument to be said that the game kind of truly opens up and really seems to almost begin at that point.
Yeah, that's the way it wound up, and I have to give credit to Martin again, certainly, because we hadn't specified that Radon had a moon. He just kept drawing this beautiful purple moon on the background art, and it was like, is the game gonna end here? Well, there's a moon. Let's try to do something with that.
I love that. I love the adventure game spirit behind that too, because it's like you keep drawing this beautiful moon, and I kind of want to walk around it and click around it. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah, that was.
Okay, two or three notes to catch me up to where we're at in the gameplay. I just have to say the Steel Drum Undercover Agent track is a banger. It's so good. Yeah. I really like that one. And then, okay, dude rides the penguin to his death. Amazing. I just unsolved a puzzle. Great line. Right, we had talked about breaking out of prison, and that was one of my favorite puzzles in the game, where you get him to break through the wall.
And then Frederik, it's essentially a series of yo mama jokes.
Yes,
right.
Is.
But
there's that internet culture from the early 2000s again.
Right. But it almost has a Monkey Island spirit to it, right? There is a little bit of insult sword fighting vibe to it as well. Like you have to pick the right mama joke.
I definitely think, that's why some people have referred to it as Monkey Island in space. It's the way that dialogue is, definitely one of the things is the way dialogue is used in a puzzle manner, which is, off the top of my head, did Space Quest ever really do that? Short of figuring out, what astral bodies is in the very first game, I'm not sure they ever really did that. Dialogue was more about world building and learning about the characters and the locations you were at, and obviously progressing the plot. But I don't recall that it ever really stopped at pick the right option puzzles.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Agreed.
Yep, that makes sense. So, there was what was my next note here? That excuse me, I want to buy this. Cool. Excuse me, I want to buy this. Excuse me, I'm going to shoplift this. Thank you. That was. I like that so much.
We
and
had
the posters in the store.
Some of the stuff definitely doesn't make sense in retrospect. Why is there a supermarket in the fortress? We had a zoo on the moon at one point, which got cut out. I guess it was kind of like an animal lab type thing, but it didn't make sense. So like when we came to the final stretch, we revisited some of the old stuff and realized that, okay, even in this absurd universe, this doesn't make sense, because I think the incentive for having a zoo on the moon was to entertain the ape men, and that just doesn't make sense at all. So some stuff got cut out, not just for length reasons, but also because at the end of the day, we're not using this location. We can transplant it to something else.
Oh, I see. Right, because you've got talking penguins and talking monkeys. So then, where's the line between like what's a zoo animal and what's a sentient animal or something?
I don't even think it was that. It was just this background art is really cool, but there are no puzzles here. It's just another area to traverse, and it doesn't make sense anyway, and it's just gonna make the whole thing more lengthy. So let's cut it.
There was a line in the grocery store that made me think of you, Paul. Banana-flavored grapes, banana-flavored kiwis, banana-flavored strawberries, and banana-flavored blueberries. It must be nice to have no attention span when it comes to food.
Right. Yeah, that's fair.
Just so random, but I was like, that is a Paul kind of a line. Like real Paul.
Yeah, there's definitely this running gag that the apes will succumb to bananas. As I said, none of us are zoologists, and I think it shows. Like going all the way back to the intro where you or is that even in the game? Am I misremembering? I think we cut a bit out in the intro where originally Roger was gonna interrogate the ape by shoving a banana in front of his face, and the ape would go, "Oh, the craving, the craving." That just got replaced by a taser. Like Beatrice is a woman of action, clearly, as you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she is. And the puzzle here is great, too, because there's this furkin guy, and he's going to blow the whole place up. So you need to sedate him and stop him from blowing everything up so that eventually you can use him after discovering the codes to get around from the store to the jails to the shuttle bay. You can eventually use him to enter an operating system, which, as Paul knows, is one of my favorite things in games. I love going into the machines.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
Definitely Space Quest 4, and this is one of the areas that I did the music for, and I love that. Like I went online and found every Windows 95 and 98 sound that I could comfortably fit into this, and tried playing around with it. Like what would work as an instrument? Well, the info chime kind of works, and the warning chord whenever something goes wrong, and obviously you got to finish it on the ta-da.
Right.
That would herald the shutdown of your computer in the real old days. Even older days, it would herald that the computer had booted up, I guess.
I love that. It would herald it. That's great. That's a great way to put it. That must have been fun. Yeah, sampling all the Windows noises, getting them. Yeah. Yeah,
that was fun. And I had an earlier iteration of that theme that was actually probably the stronger one, but again, trying to make everything fit together and have sort of a continuity in how stuff sounded. I even went back and redid some of my own cues that I wasn't entirely satisfied with, including the Windows one. But that was really, really fun to do. And I recall very proudly that the other guys on the team loved the idea.
I'm not surprised. On the photocopier, it spits out a copy on goldenrod. What is that? Do you know?
Now, that's a good question. I don't know. Like, the first thing that enters my mind when I hear goldenrod is like Han Solo yelling, "Hurry up, goldenrod!" at C-3PO, but I don't think that's it. So I would have to get back to you on that.
I was thinking penis personally when you say goldenrod. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Well, again, teenagers, it's not impossible. It's not impossible.
There was another one there was a joke on the gun store when you get to the moon that talks about Gosper's glider gun, and if you know, you know.
Right.
I can't, but I didn't know.
Yeah, I think that was definitely also Andres. I think we had the longest thread on the. Like, I can't remember the context this would appear in, but we had a long thread on the developer forums where he was trying to also get the game of life in there as some sort of reference. Everyone else was unfamiliar with it, so we had to try and explain it to us. And, we obviously just kind of went, "What?" And he tried to explain it again, and we went, "What?" And this went on for a while until he just kind of dropped the matter and it never made it in there.
Yeah, that sent me down quite a rabbit hole because I didn't know and I wanted to know. And 20 minutes later, I'm on a Game of Life simulator hosted through a website or whatever. And like you guys were saying, once I got to the simulator, I'm just like, what? I don't know what to do with this. So
Exactly.
This is where this road ends, I guess.
But again, that's the example of someone coming in with some really, rabbit hole knowledge that, this group of people together just had knowledge of the weirdest stuff, Mel Brooks reference sketches that no one remembered at the time, Gosper's glider gun, Game of Life, Goldenrod evidently,
Right. Oh, and in this part of the game too, the Fifth Element cab. I love that movie, so I was so excited to see the taxi cab. It took me a second too. I'm staring at it for a minute, like, is this futuristic Larry? Like, no, that's Fifth Element. That was good.
Yeah, I mean, the sad thing is that at the time we started, that was, a quite recent movie,
right.
I suppose.
Right.
And now it's anything but.
The music when you get to the moon was kind of StarCrafty. I've played a lot of StarCraft.
Yeah, that was funny to transcribe because that was one of Ragged's. So it was like this beautiful, StarCraft, the Dig type kind of thing. Yeah. But again, the audio quality wasn't up to snuff, so I had to play that back real slowly and try to map out the chords. Beautiful piece. Again, an example of other people really knocking it out of the park.
Yeah, it gives you that Pylo erection, all-inspiring sort of vibe, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just the way to get to the moon is a great little puzzle too, with the intercoms and learning the codes, photocopying the book. I loved every minute of that.
Well, I'll tell you something I remember fondly that mercifully got cut out, and this was, I leveled this accusation at Pistonia de San. Even when you walk up to the capsule that you sneak in to get fired off to the moon, Méliès style, you'll notice the text on is kind of blurry. And originally, I can't remember what the name of the brand was, but there's a slogan on there that says, "For shooting your load across the galaxy." And even we thought that was in bad taste, so that got censored by a bit of a blur.
Right.
Oh, amazing.
But you get shot out onto the moon, which was awesome, and then you end up with this general. Now, okay, explain the general, or what would you call
gun
him
salesman,
in the hierarchy? The gun salesman guy.
All I remember is he was a character that I had sketched out. So, like, ostensibly it's a Worms reference, of course, because he's a worm in military gear. We needed someone to provide Roger with something to progress. So, hey, again, it's kind of, I suppose in retrospect, it's kind of like the Beach Resort 2.0. Someone has a terrible idea to, set up a business where it makes no sense to set up one, and he's moaning that business is horrible. But again, I'm glad people are so nice to us, because some of the stuff in this game makes absolutely no sense when you hold it up to scrutiny.
This makes so much sense. He's like, we get the weapons from the monkeys, but we can't use the weapons. And it put him in such a funny position where he's got a perfectly viable idea, a viable business where he doesn't really have to spend money on inventory. And all of it means absolutely butt kiss because he can't use any of it.
Right.
I think we had a joke at his expense at the outro that I got cut, that I remember writing, which was that, the ape with the teapot was going to show up and say, tea, anyone? And Dweeble, the gun salesman, would go, I'll have a cup. And off screen you would have him go, no fingers, no fingers.
That's great. So you have to get past this giant cat, which is essentially what the puzzle is. You go and you have to get. You previously have catnip that you lifted from the store, which is a part of how you got the photograph, so you could be recognized in the face scanner.
That whole thing was so random because that was. I think that was me having just watched Monty Python's Flying Circus or something. I can't remember who suggested it should be a moon cat, but there's like this classic Monty Python sketch where a cat is confused. So there's like a company of cat. The cat isn't confused. It's stuck in inertia, and it needs to be confused to snap out of it. And John Cleese and Michael Palin and all of these guys pull up in a van and put on a whole show just intended to confuse the cat. And one of the things in that show is someone in a walrus outfit and a pogo stick, and I've like, this was the VHS days obviously, so I kind of I thought that was a mouse costume, and just in a chat went Dweeble in a mouse costume on a pogo stick, and that's the one thing that sticks, right? So that's, and I did a tiny bit of music for that, which is just like a little jazz drum fill. Like if you've watched the sketch, it becomes very apparent that it's all in reference to that.
Yep, that makes sense. And then, okay, there's a whole bunch of great stuff because you end up on like this moon planet, and you can go, all of the buildings are from an outside view. Yeah. And then you get to choose where you're going, which reminds me of a few different games, actually. Even something like Quest for Glory 3. I know you didn't play a lot of that, but just being able to enter a city, see it from the upper view, and then zone in on each of the zones. It was so much fun to explore.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, my main reference to that would be Monkey Island again, because it kind of mirrors how the top-down view of the islands would look across all of the games, actually.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And then, when you go up on the satellite, and then you end up cleaning up the satellite, and it's like, it turns out it's for absolutely no reason, and the narrator and Rogers both hate on the devs together. That was great. You're like, there's not
Roger's
even a point
good
system.
at it. He's good at it. He's a janitor. Come on.
Yeah, and there was a line I loved. You are too stuck in the 70s to start collecting 80s nostalgia now.
Nice. Yeah.
That was another good one, too. So, yeah, Paul, you probably have some notes about the moon somewhere.
No, actually, I don't. I was going to say that I'm looking at my notes now, and immediately skips to the end because in a complimentary sort of way, I think I became incredibly immersed in this part of the game to where I wasn't stopping I wasn't stopping to jot down notes anymore at this point. I remember, I don't know. This was the night I remember spending, I think a good 4 or 5 just straight hours, completely immersed in the game and coming to and be like, dang, I didn't really write much down in that. But alas, it was like 3 days ago, so I do still remember.
Well, I think you can definitely tell that the moon section, you know, the second half of the game was written by one development team as opposed to a development team that was trying to find its own legs but had people coming and going. You know, looking at it now, the first half takes a while to get going, and it is a bit less consistent in its design than the moon base and everything following that, which was written by the same bunch of guys and implemented by them as well. You know, backtracking a bit, like we talked about how you get to the moon earlier, and we had a whole cutscene that was cut out, which was like going to be the view of the capsule being shot off into space and approaching the moon and burning up in the thin atmosphere and that, and eventually we couldn't find a direction for it, and the capsule changed layout, and we just wound up with what you see now, you know, the view of the 2 planets and the capsule going from of the planet and the moon, obviously, and the capsule going from one to the other.
Right, that makes sense.
But again, if you look at the first half of the game, that's where you find the stuff that was cut out. The second half, not so much. Off the top of my head, we had this weird, you know, kind of like silo room with like massive silo with ladders all the way down that you would climb to get to the mines, I think. But again, a location that doesn't really add much, so why not just skip straight to the mines instead of having to go somewhere else first?
Right.
Yeah, this from here on out, basically, the game, best way I could maybe to explain it was it made me sit up in my chair. You know, you kind of lean forward, rub your hands together. Like I became incredibly engaged. I don't think I thought of it consciously as being different than the first half. It just seemed like the stakes were getting more intense and more meaningful and things like that. But it does have my favorite. My favorite puzzle solution in the game was because I thought in my head, man, it would be really funny if the game let me do this. Or if this turned out to be the thing, and it was the thing, which was taking a hammer and knocking out the other half of the bird.
Me too. I was immediately, I'm like, oh, I know what I'm going to do with this, like right away.
Yeah, the bird is so much Chris Yushko. Again, if you check out his stuff, it's just so wildly apparent that's him.
Yeah, I believe it. Oh, and then you end up having to get a piece of pie that you end up stealing, and at the end you give it to the guards, and you're like, ha, I kept that in my butt cheeks. They just ate butt cheek pie.
Banana pie, obviously.
Oh, obviously. Could be strawberry flavor, or no, banana flavored strawberry.
It has to be banana flavored strawberry pie, yeah.
But that's good. And then, okay, so after this, and you do this work with the lab animals and stuff, you end up finding out that, you're talking to the Vohaul, and you could essentially, this is where it comes up to the part where you could end the game soon.
Yeah, there's a Mass Effect reference too, in that you can choose between again, very recent reference at the time, you can choose between the Paragon ending or the Renegade ending.
Okay.
That makes sense, because then you end up, you're like, well, of course I'm going to change his life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a whole section on its own. I can't remember at one point, I can't remember when the branching of endings made it in, but I mentioned some controversy earlier surrounding the idea that Vohaul was gonna, be good, and we definitely had some sillier iterations of that earlier on. The very first one, I'm a bit ashamed to admit today, was he was kind of gonna gender swap in a way and wind up in a maid's outfit and change diapers on the newborn Roger Jr. at the end of the game. Like I say, isolated small town Denmark, that's going to be my excuse forever. And then another iteration was pretty close to the actual end of the game, but Vohaul was going to call himself, what was it? William Basil Nice, or Will Be Nice for short. And there's a reference to that in that when you encounter Vohaul in his childhood, in his first memory, his parents refer to him as Wilby.
Right.
So that's a reference to an aborted joke of our own, basically.
I really, really liked how when Vohaul kind of has you cornered, you're on the little bridge that he ejects you from with the wrong answers. There's one of the dialogue choices was really almost delightfully cathartic in a sense, where if you try to use the plunger on his face, the writing isn't on the nose, but it's essentially like you realize you're paying homage to the cover of Space Quest 4.
Absolutely.
In some way or another, and it was just that was really nice. Because obviously that scene never quite happened, so it's like the closest we get to having that,
Yeah, and you get flung off a bridge.
Right, until he dies. Yeah.
It was never going to work.
Right. And then, okay, so then this game does what my favorite thing that adventure games do, and I say this lovingly. Actually, I say this, my game does it too. That's his I don't know, assuring you I mean it from a place of love as possible, is that it does this thing where adventure games like to kind of lose their mind at the end. And they go crazy. And I don't, it's like almost a phenomenon at this point. There's so many adventure games where at the last second they go, just something kind of insane happens and changes the entire course of the ending. And I always struggle for references, but I don't know, Kathy Rain's one of them.
We were working for the longest time on that, and I'm very sorry I'm speaking in absolutes, the second half of the game is so much more consistent. We didn't cut out much stuff. Well, we actually had a bunch of other memories lined up. Vohaul's in a school play. Roger has to feed him lines to save him the embarrassment of flopping it. That was an early one. So we were working on this thing, and I think from some team members, certainly Chris Mining, who was still with us when that was drafted, from this deep psychological space of like, how does trauma work? You know, I'm not gonna, you know, say I got heavily into that or approached it from a very intellectual angle, but we had team members who did, and like I think on the surface level at least, it does make some kind of sense that he would wind up as this evil dude. So like that was definitely on the mind of some people on the team, clearly, you know. Let's try to take this guy who, as I mentioned way earlier, is just evil, and let's try to explore that a bit, if the player will indulge us and not just kill him off, of course.
I think that's what made it my favorite part of the game, because it's clear how much care and love went into this part, and it's really nice because it's like the meat and potato, like the protein. It's like the substance, you know. It's like we're having a lot of fun jokes. I don't know, maybe if we frame it as jokes or dessert in a sense, like it was nice to have this kind of substance. And there's something about being able to weave the three doors together. To the listeners, you know, there's three traumatic incidents in Vohaul's life that made him the way he is, and you can go to these moments and try to intercept the trauma from happening, and thus prevent him from becoming, you know, the cartoonish villain that he is. You know, I'm bad because I'm evil, sort of thing. And it's just, you know, it's really rewarding, and it's
the wildest thing that's coming back to me now, and I've blanked out of the name of the guy who wrote that, unfortunately, but at one point we had a writer attached who either he was working there or he had worked at McDonald's. And he basically, like, what you see in the Monolith Burger now is a complete abbreviated bastardization of what he wrote. He had mapped out an entire section of the game where you would accurately work out why the fries aren't salted. You would fix the ice cream machine. Wow. You would like do everything like true to life. And you know, unfortunately, it was just too long, and it was probably thought that the narrator gag was going to be funnier of having the narrator, return to the real world and come up with the instructions for how to fix the monoflurry machine. But we had a section at one point which was just an homage to everyone who has worked at Burger King or Wendy's or McDonald's or whatever.
Yeah.
Wow.
Without having known the alternate, I can confidently say it was funnier, because that was one of the best bits in the game, the narrator part.
It was
the
damn
subversion.
good.
Yeah.
It was damn good. Oh, and the first one where you go into the house to see his early childhood, it took me to a few different places. For one, it was like a Brady Bunch looking house, and it was like the bitter nuts from I think it was Torn's Passage. It kind of reminded me of that, the way that the adults were talking to each other. And then young Vohaul was so South Park in that one scene, especially when he died and there was the explosion, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's Cartman, right? It was great.
Or especially when you close that part out and it does the little spotlight on his smiling face. Yeah,
totally. Oh, and in the restaurant. Go ahead.
One really funny thing about that I think is funny to this day is that eventually, obviously, the two guys reunited, and we got the Space Venture Kickstarter and the game recently, which is very good for Space Quest fans. I encourage everyone to play it. But when the guys reunited, we as a subset of the community would do these superfan hangouts where we would, hang around on Google Meets when that was still a thing, and play Space Quest and talk and all kinds of stuff. And we had Scott Murphy on the very first one, and he came to elaborate that the original master plan between the resentment that Vohaul has for Roger Wilco is that they were originally going to be conjoined twins, and they would get separated, and Roger would get the good organs and Sludge would get the bad ones. Wow. And I just kind of went, that's real interesting, because our game has originally I believe /Vohaul was also going to be a brother, eventually I think retconned to be the Space Quest 1 scientist aboard the Arcada. And I just kind of went, that's interesting. We have this whole thing in our fan game. Scott doesn't like fan games, so I doubt he has played it, which is fine. That's his prerogative and all, being one of the original creators. I just thought it was funny how we have this whole bit about Vohaul being sold off to science. It's kind of like almost there, almost in the spirit of what was originally intended, but not quite. And I just think that's really funny that we got so close to landing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is interesting. It begs like a lot of almost existential questions. How do you end up on such a similar wavelength to somebody, especially if you followed a similar path or studied their work?
Well, I mean, if you have nothing better to do for 9 years than to study these games,
Right.
you might wind up with some deep knowledge about them. I'm not priding myself of it or anything. I just thought it was a curious coincidence.
Yeah.
So in the restaurant, when you go to fix it, I have two comments I want to make. For one, turns out that the ice cream machines and that not working must be such an old school thing, because it's the trendy thing now. It's like, oh, you go to McDonald's and the McFlurry machine's always broken. But you were talking about that way earlier than anybody else.
Yeah, I'm only really thinking of that now that you mention it, but I think that's a carryover from the guy who worked at McDonald's who wrote it. Like, I think obviously the layout of what's going to be broken, what is the manager who shows up going to be unsatisfied with, that's still there. But like, there was going to be a whole bit about getting salt for the fries and that sort of stuff that didn't make it not very complicated in the final game, but it was going to be at one point. So I think the McDonald's people knew that their ice cream machines were always broken before we customers did.
Right.
And fixing it, there's a flux capacitor in the machine when you go to fix it on the bottom right, and Back to the Future style.
Yeah, again, I don't even I would bet that wasn't even scripted out. I would bet that's just Marvin.
Oh, that's great. And then the guy that comes in, sorry about the noise there, but the guy that comes in to do the supervision on the restaurant is looks like a Vogon from...
Yeah, there's
like
one
entirely.
more reference to, I've only watched one of the adaptations of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I've never actually read it, to my shame. It's on the bucket list, but there is one more reference. We've skipped over Nebuchadnezzar's office on the moon base, which is one of the first locations you enter when you break in, if not the first. There's a bookcase with a ton of books there, and every single one of them has this little blurb of text that you can access by picking them up and looking at them. And one of them is is it Vogon opera something? I can't remember it. It's definitely a Hitchhiker's reference, but yeah, there are a couple of those in there.
I love it. And fixing the machine, that's where you got to do the fun back and forth with the narrator and talking to Beatrix. And then the most refreshing thing is the game has you all geared. And this also reminds me, Paul, of the puzzle in your game where you go into the catacombs. You're all geared to have to deal with the puzzle. You're going to match these schematics. You're like, oh, God,
Right.
what do I need to do? And then the game's like, it just does it for you. It's okay. Chill out.
Right.
Yeah, but again, definitely retrofit. Originally, it was going to be working out the schematics.
Oh, yeah, that would have been a
But
big...
I'm happy that you enjoyed that section, and you wouldn't necessarily know that something's cut out, because
No.
I'll always have that memory of a super elaborate monolith burger section that could kind of become a game on its own one day.
Yeah.
Oh, and Steve, the cook, he's a Ferengi. I could see that. He's got the great big ears on him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right. I didn't know the name, but I know the Star Trek thing. You're right. Yeah.
Great. Something Star Trek, says Paul.
No, I just to the machine puzzle real quick, the ice cream machine. I'm so glad that it went this way. Not only because it's one of my favorite bits in the game, but also I feel like some adventure games make the mistake of giving you something really hard at the end. And it's it's almost the opposite to me of platformers. You don't want a boss level fight at the end. Usually by the end of an adventure game, I'm mentally exhausted and kind of just want to, I don't know, want to be chauffeured to the finish line in a sense, as opposed to have this grueling gate kept last puzzle sort of thing.
Well, you do kind of get a boss battle in this one. At
That is
least
true.
The skeleton of one.
I'm excited to talk about that.
Right.
But first, when Roger picks up the mop, he says something that I relate to, and he says, I like mops.
Right. Yeah.
That's how I'm like, I like maps. It's a thing. It's just, I do.
Right.
And I really resonated with him in that moment. Like, yes,
Nice.
I get this. This is so good.
You know, the funny thing about the boss fight is obviously the Vohaul you see there. You know, Vohaul in his subconsciousness is like the big baddie that you see on the diagram in the beginning of the game when they're trying to build the robot but failing.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, that was going to be how the robot was originally going to look. So, you know, originally it was going to be this intimidating robot, and then somewhere along the line someone thought it was going to be much funnier and more effective if he was this crappy junk heap assembled from whatever they had lying around. But he still views himself as the original vision of the robot.
Oh, yeah, I loved that. And then, the big fight was all God of War immediately. You know, just that was the game on PlayStation where you're fighting the big god and it's like a puzzle game and you have to run around and they're trying to strike you. That's where.
Yeah, I can see that now. That would definitely, I think, be Chris again and maybe Andres. Like, those guys were the ones adding the Mass Effect references. Like, I was so far behind on the video game scene at that point that, you know, I was still playing the 90s stuff at that point. I wasn't really playing any new games. I got into God of War way later than other people, I think. So I would level that at those two, definitely.
Makes sense. God of War was fun because it was an action game, but it hit the adventure game itch because it was essentially a puzzle solving game.
It did, and I think like there are some sections of especially the first one that I fought for hours, and I would be so proud. Like the Blades of Hades, like everyone will have trauma from that if they've played the first one.
Yes. I Paul, you can just nod and smile here.
I was nodding. Yeah.
Yeah, good. So do you have anything you want to say about the ending before I talk about kind of what happens after this?
No, you can go ahead, because the great thing about talking to you two about this is that, you know, I'll remember one thing, but as soon as you start talking about it, more stuff comes back. So, you know, I'm remembering stuff about Vohaul Strikes Back that I haven't thought of about in years, you know.
Oh, I love that. Because, this whole, to get in, to fight the god, to get into his whole subconscious, you have to clear all this gunk out of his ear. There was like a screw and an old Lego guy and a skull, and that was so satisfying too. You're like, oh, maybe that's part of the problem. He wasn't able to hear properly. And then falling down his face, the whole plunger moment, like, this was just epic. Even just figuring out the puzzle of how to kill him. It took me a long time, and I loved it.
That's again the whole thing about this actually being quite serious when you scrape away the comedy, you know, the root of all evil, this stain on his consciousness.
Yes.
You know,
And cleaning
it kind of all makes sense from a psychological perspective, weirdly enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really, really does. And then after you do defeat and you get to the end, there's a little cartoon and there's a squirrel that's going on with the nut. It took me to the beginning of that Pixar movie where you get the little short at the beginning and there's the squirrel and the nut. I don't know. I think it's from Ice Age. I don't know.
Yeah, it is from Ice Age, and I think that was one of the first things I scored, which was a challenge, because I'm definitely what you would call autodidact as a composer. I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, if it sounds good, it probably makes sense from a music theory point of view, but I wouldn't really know. I don't read music or anything like that. So writing this piece with all these references in the instrumentation to the various characters that appear on screen and timing that and making that work with Bob Siedenberg's Space Quest 3 team, that was fun. You know, that was a challenge.
You know, you had mentioned like the psychological depth. When I finished playing the game, my son asked me about it, and we ended up chatting about it for some time. And I kind of walked him through what happened at the end. I was like, well, you actually go into Vohaul's psyche and attempt to rescue him, and essentially, instead of betraying him betraying is the wrong word. Instead of turning your back on him and letting him die, you actually can choose to help make him a better person. And by the time I had walked him through everything that had happened, he was just like, wow. And I was like, right? Like, it was just like, this is so intelligent. Like, this, it's just, I don't know, this game just blew me away in so many different aspects, especially when you're going into it thinking fan game, which is, I guess, circling back to the start of the episode, why I felt it does it a disservice in a sense. It's just so much grander and more thoughtful and well polished and thought out, not to throw every other fan game under the bus. Lord knows I haven't played them all, but it does do it a disservice to a degree, because it's just there's the care and effort never ceases. And that was another thing I kept in mind as the game was going, was like, I was looking, maybe it's the dev in me, I don't know, but I was almost like subconsciously scanning for signs of fatigue, and it never happened. Like, the effort just multiplies as the game goes on, if anything.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that, because I think like it was probably more or less written chronologically. I mean, certainly the bulk of the game was mapped out that way, and then we would return to stuff that we would tinker with, like especially the intro, which went through numerous iterations and somehow just got longer and longer. But, you know, the one thing that, now that you mention it, that I consider really brilliant that I'd forgotten about, and I don't know who came up with this, if it's Chris again, but if you use the look event on you know, subconscious monster Vohaul, he's not just holding a club, he is holding a grudge. That is what his weapon is labeled as in the game.
Very cool. Wow, I missed that. He's holding a grudge. Nice.
Again, you know, that's I have to give credit to everyone who did writing, except for myself, because, you know, that's the kind of brilliance we were dealing with.
Yeah, that makes sense too. And then the skiing at the end was adorable. Vohaul Winter Wonderland. I love that. And yeah, the Full House writes back at the end. That's great. Him in any tuxedo and the giant ring, not to put near a fire. It was all just beautiful. It was hilarious. And then the whole like ends up asking Beatrice to marry him, but they're literally on the wedding floor at the time. This game didn't lose its place or its identity at any time, which is, like Paul said, this is not common. I was thoroughly wondering when it was going to go off the rails, and it really, 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 really didn't.
Yeah, if I could just pile on too, since we are, I thought it was incredibly intelligent writing what you guys did with the Beatrice conundrum with Roger. I mean, it's such a plausible, like, this is likely how, I mean, I can see how you arrived there. I feel like that's exactly where Roger would have arrived, where it's like, if we don't get married, then she doesn't have to die. And, you know, let's explore that. Like, what happens? And then she starts to pressure him to get married. What if she's pregnant before the marriage, and now there's even more pressure for Roger to marry her? Like, it's a really interesting subject matter to explore that just it caught me so off guard.
Yeah, I give Andrus full credit for that, because he wrote the dialogue between Roger and the bartender in the caves section of the game, because who else would you empty your heart to than the bartender?
Right.
And I think, you know, that is just stellar dialogue, because it takes this, like, I think we're used to seeing relationships, in romantic relationships in games, through kind of a lens, the same as movies, where it's kind of improbable. But in that moment, in that scene, and in those lines of dialogue, it's kind of all laid out in a way where that kind of makes you go, oh yeah, that would be an absolutely impossible situation to deal with.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know how he came up with that, but I still think it's absolutely brilliant.
And so that brings us to essentially the close, where we find out that she's pregnant with twins. And of course, I really, from a pedantic nerd point of view, which is me most times, it puts you in such a fun position to theorize about what's going to happen. So I'm curious what you might have had in your mind, or what you guys might have done if you were to continue. But the first thing it makes me think of is that since there wasn't a daughter mentioned in Space Quest 4, that maybe the timeline has now changed and she isn't doomed to die. Or maybe the daughter wasn't mentioned in Space Quest 4 for other reasons. I don't know. What was your take?
I think it was more the idea that, hey, have you considered this could also be a possibility? You know, have you considered that Roger Jr. got to tell you a lot of stuff in Space Quest 4, but maybe he didn't tell you everything. You know, maybe he left some stuff for you to discover on future adventures. You know, I don't think we ever had an idea where it would go from there, but like the way I see it, it would kind of be like it would maybe be a little arrogant to just have a fan game that aims to tie up loose ends and doesn't leave any for anyone else. So I think that was kind of like left behind as a breadcrumb, like, hey, nice. If you want to make a sequel to this game, there's this path to follow.
Cool.
You know, and you know, to this date, no one has done that. But you know, who knows? It may happen someday. You know, talking to you, I really appreciate that you've discovered this game quite a few years after it came out, and you know, you loved it, and I'm really grateful for that. And I can only hope that, you know, people will take away from this conversation that, you know, maybe they want to play it.
Yeah.
The fireworks too at the end. Holy shit, those were beautiful. I had to take screenshots. I shared one with Paul at the end.
Oh yeah. We had I mentioned an aborted cutscene earlier, and basically originally what happened when we got Patrick on board was he was supposed to be a 3D modeler. And then he wound up the project lead because he basically volunteered to do it, and he seemed competent to do it. And then it transpired he was a really, really good programmer as well. So he got a lot of caps all of a sudden. But the 3D modeling in the game is divided between himself and Chris, who also picked up on some 3D modeling while working on the game. At least that's the impression I get. And I think he did the fireworks at the end.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
And I think the aluminum mallard model that you see there is probably the same one that's used in Incinerations, you know, because Chris had it sitting around, so why not?
Yeah. When was the last time you interacted with this game? When was the last time I don't want to say like played through the whole thing or whatever, but yeah, when was the last time you fired it up?
I don't even remember when the last time I played it was, because I soured on it a bit, and I don't want to leave this on a dour note, but, you know, spoiler alert, the whole game is silent because there is no talkie. We kind of gave up on that, and like it got to a point where in 2013 or thereabouts I was sitting around, you know, cutting lines on my own and running them through, you know, Audacity compression and whatever, and putting them into the game and realizing that this performance absolutely does not work with what's on screen. And I just kind of soured on it and kind of walked away from it without telling anyone. And then it died a quiet death. So that would probably have been the last time I actually played it. I've, you know, had the joy of interacting with it since, in that the now sadly late Ameriot Akago, I can't even pronounce it correctly. He was a YouTuber from the Netherlands named Martin Amkreutz, and he was set up to actually voice the character of Nebuchadnezzar in our game, and unfortunately he passed before we made anything from the talkie official. But he'd done a playthrough when I joined the chat a couple of times and answered questions, and that was great fun. And of course our good mutual friend Trolls did a series of videos on Vohaul Strikes Back also quite a few years ago, and we unearthed the unfinished talkie for his sake, so, you know, he could play through that and show some highlights on YouTube. And, you know, with the sad untimely passing that I mentioned earlier in mind, it seemed like a cool thing to do, you know, particularly to show off the voice work that this guy did. You know, he voiced Nebuchadnezzar and what's the rebel leader's name? Finkel, I think, and some other guys.
In the credits under additional programming, there's you, but there's also the mystery programmer.
I don't even remember. I don't remember who that is.
No. I guess it's a mystery to this day.
I think it was just some guy we had who did a little bit of programming but didn't get credited. Either that or it's Chris who didn't want to credit himself, but I think he may be credited somewhere. So I don't actually remember. I've been meaning to ask, but I keep forgetting to do it. But like, you'll see a ton of names, including some of the earliest developers who worked on it, like one guy credited for pre-production art, I believe, is called Michael Ecke, and he was this German guy who drew these lovely sprites in, the classic Space Quest 4 resolution of 320 times 240 when the game was going to be in that resolution. So yeah, I think we made an attempt to credit most everyone who had contributed at some point or another.
I should say, for what it's worth, I actually quite appreciate that it's not a talkie game. It's not that I have anything against talkies. It's just, unless all of the voice actors are pretty damn solid, sometimes I feel that talkies can diminish the final product to a degree. I hate to say it, but the few, actually I forgot the saying, the few weak links or something like that kind of take the whole thing down a notch, in a sense, where it's like I feel like the whole voice acting team has to be pretty solid, and if just a few of them aren't, it can start to really take away from it. And even when they are really good, it creates sometimes it can create pacing issues with reading, and then there's just the joy of like giving each character its own voice, albeit in my head, or sometimes if I'm playing with my son, being able to voice characters back and forth to each other. But I think there's a lot of value in adventure games that don't have the voice acting.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, many of us played them that way. Some, playing them in the early 90s maybe couldn't afford a CD-ROM drive or a sound card or whatever. And some of us, could obtain the games in maybe less legal ways. But that was at a time where the broadband or lack thereof was prohibitive in terms of getting the talkies. So you sailed the seas and you got the floppy version.
Right. Right, and especially then, and especially the Sierra games, it was definitely better usually without the voices.
Right. Yeah, I think so too, and I think some of what I ran into was definitely people mispronouncing dialogue and names for one, and just the pacing being completely thrown off, and
right.
Like it's definitely a curse to have been aware of the game, if not, having worked on it for all 9 years for that long, because like you said, you kind of make up your own voices for every single character, and like there's no one that can compete with what's in your head.
Right. Well said. Yeah. Well, I hope, if anything, that this conversation with us can maybe refresh your view and opinion on it, since you had left it in not the greatest place the last time you interacted with it. I hope you could see it again through our eyes.
Oh my God!
I'm truly in love with the game.
Everybody in my family, because they always ask me when I'm playing a game for an episode, because sometimes it drags, right? So I get the sympathetic, right. How you doing, right? And all I kept saying is, this game is fucking awesome. I swear, one of like my top 10 games I've played. Yeah. And it was just so true to the original and so funny and its own thing that I just couldn't get enough of it. I loved every second, every click.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. Like I even with the talkie experience, I absolutely loved it when the reviews started coming in, because we did get a few reviews from either from some publications or enthusiastic fans, and it just warmed my heart. That made it all worth it. Yeah, I'm not a Time Lord. Warmed my heart. I've definitely spoken English for longer than I'm accustomed to here.
That's all right. Is there anything else anyone wants to say to wrap this up, other than obviously go play it, Paul? I think we're going to link the game underneath. Play it in ScumVM. I started not in ScumVM, and when I had to get the save and I switched to Scum, and then I updated Scum, it really upped my play experience. It was really nice.
It's a really old build, so I would always go for ScumVM. At the time we released it, obviously, there was no support in ScumVM for Adventure Game Studio games of any kind, but my impression is that it's really good now. So you should just skip our 2011 installer and do that.
Yeah, I guess I would say to a lot of our listeners who I've successfully peer pressured into playing the Phantom Fellows, if you played Phantom Fellows and you enjoyed it, then you have to play this game. It's it's cut from the same cloth. I think that's a saying, right? It's in the same spirit. As Roger has a lot of Oliver vibes, and if the best I can say it is, if you played Phantom Fellows, definitely play this, which is also at the risk of sounding narcissistic, it's also the highest praise I can probably play it. It's like mine. So,
Oh, there's no shame in that.
It's funny actually making the game too, because we'll go back and play other games and watch things that Paul, like this, has never seen or played, and I can see the references back and forth, even though there was no connection. Like clearly, same brain meld thing going on.
I'll definitely say that you should play Incinerations too, though, because like some of the feedback we got, again, as I said, was kind of like, well, this is good, but it's more like Monkey Island in space, and we went, okay, in my mind at least, Incinerations is probably the superior Space Quest game. Like, I know Chris would disagree, and he says Vohaul Strikes Back is a superior game, so we'll have a chance to meet up at PRG this year and hash it out once and for all, which game is the better one. But like for my money, he nailed the vibe that we know and love from the first couple of Space Quest games a bit better, whereas we probably unconsciously took that and absconded with it and you know, made something different out of it.
Fair. All right. Well, then, on that note, play both of these games that we've just talked about. Play the Phantom Fellows, play Vohaul Strikes Back. It's been amazing talking to you, and all of this is brought to you in part by our Patreoners. Now, first off, we have a few new ones that I want to, garble your names. We have Thanks for Joining That Emo Bitch. I think I got that one right. Evan Lynch, Doug Harris, the Doug Harris, a Doug Harris. Any Doug Harris is great. And K. I'm going to stick with that for now, and Robert N. So thank you so much, as well as let me just change this on my little screen.
Also,
here.
Thank you, guys. I never know when to say thank you because Anna's reading this stuff, and so just
right now.
Thanks.
Thanks.
But nicer than that. Thanks. Yeah, right.
Thank you. Really appreciate you, especially in our True Believer tier, to Brian, Mick, Tim, Gareth, Chapman, Christopher, Yanis, all of you, especially to thank you. Here I am saying your names.
We'll see Mick and Gareth soon, and Frederik at PRGE. Very
That's
cool.
right.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be an epic time. And also, you can probably find me, Anna, on Twitter at CGG Podcast and Paul at Phantom Fellows. We're also on Blue Sky, Instagram, and YouTube. And if you want more Phantom Fellows, head over to thephantomfellows.com because there's a whole bunch of info and there's a walkthrough and a full achievement guide and stuff there too. A whole bunch of stuff, music and merch and t-shirts. And also you can send us your words. Email us at don'tdoamurder@gmail.com. Again, you can support us through patreon.com Classic Gamers Guild, and come hang out with us on our Facebook. We're a page and we're a group, the Classic Gamers Guild, and we talk about games and, well, all sorts of other neat stuff.
Dude, that was so efficient. It took me 8 minutes to get through that last episode. Those poor listeners.
No,
Holy shit.
I listened.
Okay. Well, we're all done. Don't do a murder. Don't do a murder.
Nice.
A murder of crows.
I love how that immediately sexualizes it too.